This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 437, Drupal Mail and Easy Email. On today's show, we're talking about sending email with Drupal, the Easy Email module, and Drupal Mail best practices with our guest, Wayne Aker. We'll also cover Content Access by Path as our module of the week. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Our guest today is Wayne Aker. Wayne is a full-stack developer with over 15 years of dedicated experience in the Drupal ecosystem. He's the founder of DrupalTutor.com, where he offers online training classes, and Zengenuity, a solopreneur development agency specializing in custom Drupal website and application development. Wayne, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
For those of you that don't know, and most of you that I think probably do, I'm John Picozzi, Solutions Architect at EPAM. And today, my co-hosts are joining us for the next 4 weeks. Ivan Stegic, CEO at 10-7. Ivan is the CEO of 10-7, a value-driven UX and Drupal development agency whose mission is to make things that matter. He lives in Minneapolis with his wife, kids, and 2 dogs. He's a huge Minnesota Twins fan, a relentless ambassador for technology, science, and common sense, and an internal optimist. Ivan, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, John.
Also joining me, Nick Laughlin, founder at Enlightened Development.
Happy to be here. I always curious who my co-founder is when you say that, though.
I just assumed Katako was a co-founder of Enlightened Development, but I could be wrong. Funny for our listeners, there were a lot of words in those intros that I could have botched, and the only thing that I felt like I botched there was Nick's co-founder status. So I feel pretty good. That was about a 95 for me. And now let's move on to our module of the week and turn it over to Martin Anderson-Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules of his own. Martin, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, John. Have you ever wanted to grant users access to edit content based on the path alias of the content? There's a module for that. It's called Content Access by Path, and it was created in the past month by Mark Conroy of Anertech, who is also a core subsystem maintainer for the Umami profile. It has a stable 1.0.0 release, which was created in the past week that works with Drupal 10. So it is actively maintained. It doesn't have a user guide yet. The module's README does include some FAQs, and the project page includes a link to a YouTube video that demonstrates how to install and use the module. It does have 2 open issues, one of which is a bug, and it is officially in use by 2 sites, obviously being so new. Now, when installed, the module adds a new taxonomy vocabulary to your site. You can add terms to this vocabulary to define sections by path, and then users on the site will have a new field where you can reference one or more of the section terms, granting the user access to edit any content with a path that matches the section. The module also includes a submodule called Content Access by Path Admin Content. When installed, users who go to the admin content listing will only see content listed that they can edit based on either the sections they've been assigned to or their ownership of the content. Now, granting edit permissions to a section of the website is a common ask for site owners, so I'm excited that this module makes it easy to set that up. There are solutions in the Contrib ecosystem based on taxonomy-based access control, and back in episode 414, we talked about access policy as a very flexible way to grant edit permissions. But in my mind, those all require more setup and may require an extra step during content creation to make sure the right access is available. Content access by path, along with something like the near ubiquitous Path Auto, can make it pretty painless to set up and use section-specific edit permissions for your content creators. So let's talk about the Content Access by Path module.
Yeah, this sounds useful in, I mean, I see that a lot of the stuff he works on is local government too. This sounds really useful in those types of situations where the editors change fairly frequently or have to edit whole sections, but you don't need to, you don't need like all of the extra configuration that like group provides. You just kind of want to be able to move things around. I guess one question that I have is, are there exceptions? Because I find that with these kind of blanket your taxonomy based ones, there's always like, yeah, we want them to be able to edit everything, but this one page that has to be that URL for XYZ.
Good question.
Does it have those exceptions, do you know, or not?
Nothing that I've seen so far, and I did watch that video that's linked on the homepage. I didn't see anything in there that seemed to sort of talk about exceptions, but certainly that's something you could potentially open up as sort of a feature request on the module.
I wonder though if you could build out your kind of permission, access based on like, I don't know, build it up as opposed to build it down. So like, hey, they have access to the smaller path as opposed to the larger path. I'm assuming it works with wildcards and whatnot, right?
So I think it works with sort of the start of the path. So you put in, let's say /about, and then it would be everything there. But if you want it to be more narrow, you can just sort of make the string that it starts with longer.
Yeah. It's funny, Nick, you hit the nail on the head for me, because I feel like there are a lot of permissions modules out there, right? But they can get kind of verbose and overly complicated. And not that groups is that, but I think groups kind of fits a bigger or wider use case. This module feels pretty like an easier way to do access rules per content that might be more understandable to folks. I feel like I've used this in the past, but it was probably back in the Drupal 7 days, I think, maybe. So it's been a while.
Probably something similar, considering this module has only been around for less than a month.
Oh dear. All right. Well, then there you go. There you go. So maybe it was something similar or completely different. All right. Well, Martin, as usual, thank you for bringing us another wonderful module. And if folks wanted to get a hold of you or suggest a module, where could they do that?
Through the Drupal and social channels, they can find me as @manclue, but we're always happy to get Module of the Week suggestions in the Talking Drupal channel of the Drupal Slack.
Great. And now on to our primary topic. So we kind of like bit off a whole chunk of Drupal today, right? We're going to talk about mail. And yeah, right. So like big topic.
I have feelings. I have lots of feelings about this.
Well, that's good. Hopefully we can share all of our feelings, and we can get really into the nitty gritty here. But overall, Wayne, you have a bunch of experience, probably far more experience than the rest of us on Drupal and the mail system and all that good stuff. I was just curious if you could kind of give us a state of Drupal mail, kind of like an overview of like how mail works in Drupal currently. And one question from my side, like, can you still send mail with just Drupal core? Is that possible?
Yeah. So if we're talking about Drupal core, the mail functionality is extremely limited. I mean, there's a handful of account, what it does out of the box. There's a handful of user account emails, update notification emails. It's all plain text. All of these emails that are in there are all super old. And the whole way it works is super old. I think I did look up the last time that those email templates and where it changed was like, if we look at something like the welcome account email that you get, it was changed in Drupal 4.7 to add the one-time login link. So that came out in 2006, and that template has been the same since then. So everyone has enjoyed their emails from site name team for almost 20 years. There have been some improvements in like Hook Mail and Hook Mail Ultra over that time, but more like lower level technical stuff. So if you think about all the time that we've been working, all of the improvements since Drupal 4.7 and like today in Drupal 10, then there's been huge changes. The whole thing is basically different. Mail, more or less the same as it worked in 4.7. So there have been some efforts to try to make it better, but they're really long processes. So I went back through the Drupal issue queue just to see kind of the history before this podcast here. And so there's issues in there to replace hook mail, which is kind of one of the main functions, one of the main API features of or access points for Drupal core mail. And that issue was posted in 2011 and still active. There's another one that was posted in 2012, which is the current one, because there is an effort right now to bring Symphony Mailer into core. That issue actually started as to bringing Swift Mailer into core, and it was posted in 2012. So it's been more than a decades-long process to get some sort of improvement into core. Now there is finally some progress happening, I think now recently. So recently they did add Symphony Mailer library into core. However, it doesn't really, first of all, it's experimental. And second of all, it's hard coded to only handle plain text emails. Like if you actually use the regular Drupal API for sending emails, this does not enable rich text or attachments or anything like that, even though Symphony Mailer, the library, could do it. So in general, like if you want to send nice looking emails from Drupal, you're going to have to go to contrib to do that. And so that means there's a lot of inconsistencies. There's multiple ways to do it. There's a lot of inconsistencies. Webmail does it Webform does it one way. Drupal Commerce does it a different way. It's all over the map. You might have multiple ways of managing email templates and stuff on your site if you are trying to have nice looking HTML emails.
You mentioned that the issue that is now for bringing Symphony Mailer in used to be Swift Mailer. What actually is the current status with Swift Mailer? Is that being taken over, or is there other news there?
So the Swift Mailer library that was originally going to come into core, or that was proposed to come into core, that was end of life. That was 2 years ago. And so there is a Swift Mailer Drupal module that integrated Swift Mailer with Drupal. That project, so the Swift Mailer library was end of life 2 years ago. The Drupal module was still working until 2 weeks ago, when it became end of life because it has it became unsupported because there is a serious security issue with the module, and no update will be created to fix that. So it is done. And I can tell you, I was involved in the security issue. It is a serious one. If you have Swift Mailer module running on your site, you really need to get to something else. It's a tricky one. It's one that even smart people who know what they're doing could accidentally enable this vulnerability. It doesn't require boneheaded behavior. I'll just say that.
So clearly I'm going to ask a lot of dumb questions today, and we're gonna go down all of the paths here with mail. We already talked about Swift Mailer. We'll talk about Mail System. We've already talked about Symphony Mailer. We'll get into more detail about those. I had a question about core, and going back to my question on the update. You may have said this, I may have missed it, but in Drupal core right now, other than what you said about enabling the Swift Mailer experimental module, if you don't have that enabled, right, core is just using PHP mail. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So to be clear, it's Symphony Mailer, not Swift Mailer. But
sorry, thank you.
But it's yes. So it's actually not a module. There is the library it can be enabled. I think you have to do it with settings PHP to enable the use of that Swift Mailer library. But yes, otherwise, core is using PHP's mail function.
Is that true for Drupal 7 as well? Or is there something else that's going on in Drupal 7? Because we still have live sites out there until, January.
I would imagine that, I don't know for sure, but I would assume that, Symphony Mailer is definitely not in Drupal 7, but I'm assuming it's PHP mail. Yeah, I think that PHP mail's been there, like I said, since back 4.7, whatever. I think that's been how it's done.
I feel like PHP mail's been there forever. That's why I'm familiar with it.
So whenever you want to override them, like you said, there's some customization you have to do, and in my experience, that usually involves something like the mail system module. Are there any changes coming to Drupal with mail system? Because the last time I implemented email, I remember there being something slightly different. Do you know anything about that?
So mail system module allows you, I mean, the mail system module does not enable HTML or rich text emails itself. It merely allows you to select which mailer implementation that you want to use, either as the default, or it also has a user interface for specifying, like, the emails that are sent from this module with this key should use this subsystem or this mailer versus other. So for example, if you have a Drupal commerce site, it has a HTML receipt. You need that. You can't send that with Drupal core. It will not be formatted correctly. You must have something else. And so you might use mail system, but let's say you wanted to enable that, but you don't want to break the password reset, which is email, which is plain text. You can use mail system to assign the Drupal core mailer for the user emails and some other contrib module to could handle the Drupal commerce receipts. That's what you would use mail system for. So most modules you could use would still require mail system. There is one exception. The Symphony mailer module for Drupal does not require mail system. It basically takes over the entire stack of the mailing functionality, and so it does not interact with Drupal core in the same way that other contrib modules do.
So this is again dumb. So for me, I honestly, for a little while there, up until probably, I don't know, we'll say in the past year, I honestly thought mail system was part of core. Like,
Same.
I was like, well, okay, now I don't feel so bad, but I was
No,
kind of
don't
like,
feel bad. Like I
was
just
kinda like-
assumed it was core.
I was
Honestly,
kind of like, oh, I'm going to turn on mail system and I'm going to select Swift mailer or
Exactly.
like whatever. And just like, and now I'm like, oh no, that was definitely a contrib module. Okay. But I mean, basically, so if I'm understanding what you're saying, Wayne, mail system, basically just a route, like a router basically for like, hey, here's what's going to send your email. Here's what's going to construct your email. Like, and then like, there you go. Like, is that a,
yeah, for everything other than, again, the Symphony mailer module, which does
Yep.
not use mail system.
because I know when I would configure it, right, I'd start, I'd set up mail system, and then I'd say like, hey, Swift mailer is going to send all my emails, right? And this is like, back in the day, so like Drupal 8, Drupal 9, that kind of time frame. And then you would have the ability to kind of set that for a couple of different ways. So that makes a little bit more sense to me.
can I ask a really, really dumb question? I'm gonna like. I know HTML email is hard, and I know we do things that are like we want to get stuff out there. We send plain text email that's most reliable. What's the major thing that's stopping us? What's the major hurdle for us to be doing HTML email by default in core? Like, it's 2024, like that sounds
feel
like,
like
something we should just be able to do. And if I'm bringing up a can of worms here, maybe we can move on to the next question. But like, I just want to understand what's the major roadblock here.
I'm interested in your thoughts, Wayne, but I feel like this is something I can answer actually about email. I think the roadblock is it is 2024, but email is running on 1988 technology. I suspect that's part of it, but also
Reliability too, though, right? Because I mean, like plain text email is highly reliable. You get a plain text email, you can read it, you can follow links, you can do everything. HTML email could vary widely between clients and different things. So like
who sees, like if you're on mobile or if you're on Gmail. But
Right.
I think part of it too is maintenance. Like if you need, like Wayne said earlier, if you need any type of complex emails, you're already installing, some sort of thing to send it. You're installing Mail System or Drupal, Symphony Mailer to like handle that. So core should just be the bare
Yeah.
basic needs of the site, and then if you need something more, you just
Also-
replace it. But what do you think, Wayne? Though, what's your opinion?
So I think I don't think it's too complex necessarily, because like I said, that one, Swift Mailer makes it relatively easy. Symphony Mailer makes it relatively easy. They've got APIs that are, you don't need to, the complexity of it. You're right, creating multi-part emails, if you actually were doing them by hand, where it's quite complex, but they take away a lot of that. I think that maybe there's no real owner for some of that. Like, I don't know who the advocate is in the core group that's like pushing for nicer emails. I can say that the maintainer of the Drupal, the Symphony Mailer module, Adam Shepard, I think his name is, he's been pushing really hard to get some of the things that he's been doing in that module into core, or something like them into core. So I think there is some new, a new push. I'm not saying it's only him, but like, I know I can see from the issue queue that he's like really, putting a lot of effort into it. So I think that's maybe just kind of like nobody was really thinking about it. It wasn't broken. And so I don't think people were really wanting to open it up. I don't think it's necessarily that hard. There is maybe there's two other things I would say though. One, HTML email does open up some security potential issues. Okay, because if you can, especially in multi-part emails, maybe more broadly, like if you can have attachments, like where do those files come from? What kind of files can you attach? Like there could be some issues there. If you have images, similar types of things, and maybe other kind of, the type of HTML code could have cross-site scripting vulnerabilities or something. So there are more possible security issues with that. The second thing that I see repeatedly in the issue queue is backward compatibility. Like, how do we, like, people, all this code, all these contrib modules are relying on hook mail and hook mail alter. And then how do you, like, you might want to go to some new system, hook mail alter and stuff. I mean, there are ways, Swift Mailer and Symphony Mailer, not Symphony Mailer, but Swift Mailer mainly, and some of the other modules, they have created a way to get hook mail to do HTML emails, but it wasn't really designed to do that. So how do you, like, the backward compatibility is a big issue as well. Like, I'm not participating so much in those issue queues, but I did, like I said, I read through several of them before this podcast here. So that's what I see a lot. That's holding it up a lot.
So I think, like, to double down on those 2 points, I think the other thing that is interesting to me, because, like, Yvonne, when you first said that, I was like, yeah, like HTML emails, like, why doesn't core do that out of the box? And then I kind of thought about it a little bit more, I guess, as far as, like, so I'm working on a project right now where, like, we're not sending emails out of Drupal. Like, the standard text-based emails are completely fine. So I think, like, the HTML email aspect of that coming from the community as opposed to being part of core makes a little bit more sense, in the aspect of it's, less of a security vector, it's less on maintenance, it's more streamlined. And, like, those emails, if you really need them as part of your project to be HTML or to be, more robust, you have, supporting modules to be able to help do that. Right.
I'm going to disagree with you on that point.
Okay.
Well, I would say this: we could take your statement that you just made and put the word media in there instead of, because I have a site, I don't need media handling, I don't need a media library, but we decided that, but we still have that in core. So I think that we decided sometimes that features are useful, even if not everyone would use them. So,
like Tor.
Yeah,
my favorite poster child for that is Tor. Like, Tor is in core. I can't envision a site where I'd ever use that. But
I see Nick creating a T-shirt that's like, remove Tor from core.
No, but the thing is, I think it helps sell Drupal to those larger. Like, there's somebody. One of the things that you alluded to, Wayne, is that there's somebody who is on the core team where Tor is important enough to them that they've taken ownership of it. So it's not like it's taking away resources from other areas of core to be maintaining that there, right? And that's one of the reasons why the email system hasn't changed in so long. Like people just haven't been investing time there. It's stable. It hasn't needed to change, but that doesn't mean that moving forward it shouldn't support more. Part of me thinks on some level it's other than the deliverability issue, which is I think sometimes a separate issue with email. Like if you're sending lots of emails, you have to worry about deliverability and spoofing and all that kind of stuff. Set that aside. Like the fact that you need 2 or 3 maybe contrib modules, fairly heavy contrib modules, and maybe a service to send commerce emails from a website is on some levels wild. Like I if you I mean, Drupal is a really robust project. Commerce is a really robust subsystem in Drupal. Why can't those two just send emails by themselves? Why do we need a whole
Well,
nother
more than that,
subsystem?
imagine that you have a Drupal commerce website that also has web form, which probably they almost all do. So then like I get this from clients all the time, and also I get it from students at Drupal Tutor when they say like, well, how do I send like an HTML email or whatever? Well, what are you sending it from? Because like on
Yeah.
Drupal commerce, if you wanted, like somebody wants to edit the commerce email template, well, go to Twig. It's in a Twig file, right? And then if somebody wants to edit the web form thing, that's under the web form config. If somebody wants to edit something else, it might be, the account emails there in a different spot. So the fact that they're all different and they all have different capabilities, that's very confusing for regular people who are not Drupal developers, who are just Drupal users. The fact that they would need to go to all these different places and learn different ways to do them, to send
Well,
email from the web. They see it as sending email from the website. It should have a
yeah.
consistent way of doing that, or editing templates and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they're
there's
not
another
wrong. Like it is
Good.
sending email from the website, and it should be consistent. And there should be a central place like where we can manage these things. And in my opinion, it should be easy. But we have 20 years of work that like just doesn't allow us to do that, and to
Yeah.
do it very easy and very successfully, or even very quickly for that matter.
There's another layer too, and this is something that I'm curious to hear what you think about, Wayne, is specifically with the Symphony mailer module. I recently launched a commerce site for a client. We used the Symphony mailer module because I saw Swift mailer was going away. And one of the issues that I ran into is you can take over the commerce. It's a very different way of doing emails. It kind of takes over the template and takes over the variables.
Yeah.
So like the variables
Sometimes when you don't expect it to, yeah.
Exactly. And the variables are different. So like if you look at the commerce email, you can't take those variables one for one and put them in the override for the Symphony mailer, because Symphony mailer in the background is remapping all of those variables, and only the ones that Adam, I think you said, is the developer of that, only ones that he decided to implement in that experimental round, which, like I said, it's his prerogative to implement what he wants. But you have to know that all the variables that are available to the default commerce order template email are not available to the Drupal Symphony mailer order commerce template. And that took me probably 3 hours of work to really figure out what the heck was going on there. It was very complex, but if there was like a core system that handled that kind of thing, there could be a really consistent way of, these types of overrides or rewrites or systems.
I think I want to clarify my point. I do agree with a standardization of email sending in Drupal. I don't necessarily agree with converting, Drupal system emails to HTML. That's what I was getting at before.
So I would like to know what the differences are between the Drupal Symphony mailer module and the Drupal Symphony mailer Lite module.
Yeah. So let's take a step back, because actually Nick brought that up about some of the issues he encountered with the Symphony mailer. So Drupal Symphony mailer Lite is the module that I created and maintain that, as it implies, is a lighter version of the Symphony mailer. So if you look at what the Drupal Symphony mailer module provides, there's actually, so if you think about what you need for sending an HTML email from Drupal, you need several things. Like one, you need to sort of handle the lower level transport of the email. Okay, that's like literally you need to be able to connect to SMTP servers or whatever. Then you need something that's like connect this to Drupal somehow, so that you have way to send the emails programmatically via the Drupal API through that thing. And then you optionally can have some other kind of builder, like sort of repeatable email builder and templating system on top of that. And so a lot of the contrib modules solve different parts of this stack. Now, the Symphony mailer module for Drupal, it solves the entire stack, and it's a little bit confusing because it has two APIs. Okay, so it is designed to integrate with Drupal core through something that they call the legacy builder. They call it legacy, but it's really Drupal core compatibility mode, which is if you use like hook mail and the regular facilities of Drupal to send mail, it will go through the legacy builder process and it will work more or less like it has before, like Swift Mailer or something else. However, if you choose to use the templates, then it switches to a different API. And that other API, first of all, the other API is great, but it's a completely different API and it has nothing to do with Drupal core. So, and it also doesn't connect with Drupal core. So that can lead to some really, I can tell you, like really weird, unexpected behavior. So like we probably, all of us on the call here have probably used reroute email before or something else that like reroutes your email or logs it instead of sends it. If you enable that and it's working, if you then go in, so maybe like what Nick said, and turn on the templates for some particular mail, commerce, receipt, or user password reset, its reroute email will no longer work for that particular email because reroute email requires hook mail alter. And once you turn on the templates, you are not using Drupal core. So it's one important thing that people need to understand, that there are two different APIs in that module, and you need to understand which one you're using. As soon as you use its templating system, you are not using Drupal core for sending emails anymore. So that means you can't use any other Drupal contrib modules that are expecting hook mail alter to be there if you are using the templates. Now again, if you happen to be going legacy mode through Symphony Mailer, then it will work that way. But if it will work with hook mail alter, but not the other way.
And Drupal, the Symphony Mailer Lite module that you developed, can you talk a little bit about
So the Symphony Mailer Lite. So due to some of the heaviness of the templating system and everything like we discussed, I created the Symphony Mailer Lite, which is like a direct port of Swift Mailer. It's like literally I copied the Swift Mailer module, which Adam Shepard also wrote. And so I just pulled all the Swift Mailer out of it and put Symphony Mailer in it. So if you are using Swift Mailer, and it doesn't have any templates or any of that stuff, it does Drupal core stuff normal. So if you were using Swift Mailer before, especially if you might be using any sort of quirks or things that it might have done, theoretically Symphony Mailer Lite might be a more direct upgrade path because all those quirks or anything that might have been there in the API are still there. Just that it's going to use Symphony Mailer, so it'll be supported.
So dumb question. Do both of those modules require that core experimental Symphony Mailer library module?
Neither of them. Neither. Both of them existed before that. The experimental thing, neither of them rely on that.
So do they?
And like I said, the core one, it only sends plain text emails. It's actually very rudimentary compared to what either of these modules can do.
Well, the core one actually doesn't it not actually do anything yet? Wasn't it just included as a dependency for future deprecations?
You can send messages through it. You can turn it on, and you can send the normal password reset emails. But
that's further than I thought.
I looked in the code, it's hardwired to plain text. So
okay.
So and this is more about composer and dependency requirements, but do both of those modules, Drupal Symphony Mailer and Drupal Symphony Mailer Lite, in their composer dependencies require the Symphony Mailer library? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So is there a future version of these modules that might just, once the experimental module is not experimental anymore, rely on that?
Yeah, theoretically, I could roll a version of Symphony Mailer Lite that was for 10.2 and up that didn't have that in its composer file, because the only thing I'm not 100% sure is which version of Symphony Mailer core has, but let's say it has the same one that I require in composer, then theoretically I could have like a 2.0 version of Symphony Mailer Lite that just didn't have that in its dependencies.
Got it. Okay. So just to make sure I'm following along here, and hopefully this is valuable to listeners, but like everybody should be moving towards Symphony Mailer in some way, shape, or form, as it appears that Drupal core will soon be moving towards Symphony Mailer. Is that a fair point to make?
Well, they need to get off SwiftMailer first. There's 34,000 sites as of like last week that are still using SwiftMailer. They definitely need to get off of that. So probably at this point, the only real option is one of these two, Symphony Mailer. I mean, Symphony Mailer is going to be the best choice. I'm not going to say it's the only choice, but it's going to be the best. I'm not entirely sure how long or exactly what that core functionality is going to be like. I mean, they're not going to make too many. They're not going to be able to make any significant changes probably till Drupal 11, right? Because this is going to be some kind of backward compatibility. But based on the speed at which things are happening, I'm not even sure like how much progress is going to be made by Drupal 11. It may even be longer. So I'm not going to say people should do it because of core per se, but just because honestly, Symphony Mailer is your best option, I think, at this point.
So we talked about moving away from Swift Mailer, right? And some of the stuff that Swift Mailer does, is that done by Easy Email?
No. So Swift Mailer, the Symphony Mailer Lite, or the Drupal Symphony Mailer module as well, either of those would be your replacement. So
for Swift Mailer,
because Swift Mailer didn't have an interface, it doesn't have templates, and so that is similar to. Here's how you can think of it. So Symphony Mailer module has sort of the low-level transport stuff, and it has templates. Symphony Mailer Lite and Swift Mailer are just the low-level transport piece. Easy Email, my other module, is just the templates. It requires something else to do the low-level transport. So Easy Email plus Symphony Mailer Lite would be roughly equivalent to what you can do with Symphony Mailer. Well, actually, it's got some additional features. I actually think it's better, but like my personal opinion, since they're both my modules, but it would be equivalent level of stack. It covers the full stack if you have those.
Got it. So let's talk about Easy Email module specifically and some of the features and how it kind of helps crafting emails, or how it helps make crafting emails in Drupal easier.
Yeah. So the Easy Email module allows you to create templates and send any kind of arbitrary emails from Drupal. And it uses the entity API for this. So the templates are config entities, and when emails are sent, they are content entities, which you can choose to save or not save. So you can send the emails that you expect Drupal to send, or you can override the templates for emails that already exist in Drupal, such as the password reset email. And you can override emails like the commerce receipt in a consistent way where you can, and the thing is, it's been designed to be easy. So the use case that brought this on is I needed to build something for a client where regular staff people, website editors, needed to be able to change the commerce receipt. That was like literally, they wanted to be able to put promotions in there, like upsells kind of for upcoming events and things, or directions and things like that. They needed to be able to do that, and they need to be able to do it without calling the developer to recode the template or anything. So this can all be done right through the interface. It's much easier than any other system as far as like how it's laid out. Doesn't require any knowledge of HTML. You can build out these templates. You can include images, attachments, all that, and then you can send them. Because they're entities, you all have the option to save them when you send, which is great, because I'm sure we've all had the experience. If you launch a website with email, you know that within about 6 to 12 months, you're getting a call or an issue is going to come up. Hey, Bob said he didn't get the email that he was supposed to get from the website. And, you know, it's surely in his spam folder, but like you have to prove that it was in his spam folder, right? Because they think the website's broken. This gives you like a nice email log. You can see exactly what happened. Like, did we generate this email? Yeah, here it is. So it's in his spam folder. So it gives you a lot of extra features like that. It basically brings email up to like a full class object within the Drupal space, within the Drupal site.
So I have two questions. First question is, why didn't we have this episode 3 months ago? Because I probably would have gone with Easy Email and Swift Mailer Lite over Swift Mailer.
It's Symphony Mailer. It's a common mistake, folks. It's a common mistake.
Symphony Mailer, yes. Symphony Mailer over Symphony Mailer Lite over Symphony Mailer. My real question is, what other features does Easy Email have? Because it sounds like one of the things that it provides, correct me if I'm wrong, like if I'm overriding the commerce emails, right, the way I have to do it right now is I have to go into the twig files and change them. It sounds like for Easy Email, it's closer to the password reset email where there's a form that you fill out, except it's an entity, and you probably have it's HTML, so you can provide HTML. It's not just
yeah. Let me just walk you through how you do it. Right, so you would go and you would create a template, and then the templates are fieldable. So since you're sending a commerce receipt that has the reference in order, so you would go add a field to it, an entity reference field to an order, and then you would go back to the edit, and there's a token browser there. And because there's a field now on the email, you can token all the token module tokens. You can put them anywhere, any token that you can get, you can put into there, and it will evaluate them on send. And so you can then build out whatever you want the receipt to be based on the fields on that particular that you've added to there. So you can add custom fields based on what type of email it is. Like a password reset email needs like a user field or something, maybe whatever user we're resetting for. So, and then one-time login link is a token at that point.
And when you say template, just to clarify for myself, you're not talking about a twig template. You're talking about template entity in Drupal.
Yeah, it's a a configuration entity. Yeah, so you're editing it in the admin interface, and it does have, like I said, it has like CK editor. I mean, it uses the regular, like if you don't even need to know HTML because you can use this text formats. So if you assign CK editor to them, they can use CK editor. They can have media embeds like for images. They can have all that stuff.
So the full stack then, if you're using Symphony Mailer Lite and Easy Mailer, is you use Symphony Mailer Lite to say, hey, when commerce says we're sending this type of email in order receipt, use this template I created over here in Easy Email and send it using this service, SendGrid or Postmark or something. Is that correct?
No. So Symphony. Okay. No. So Easy Email will do the part with that sort of says like what that halts the regular commerce receipt and then replaces it with a template. It has a sub module called Easy Email Overrides that does this, where for these emails have to be, these other emails that are known have to be declared, but then it basically has a way to hook into that and prevent them and send a different one. The Symphony Mailer Lite module is where you would configure like, this is my SMTP server and stuff like that. So Easy Email would just hand it over to basically the Drupal mail system, and then like the mail system module would be configured like any Easy Email module or emails need to go through Symphony Mailer Lite. And now I should say, Easy Email does also work with the regular Symphony Mailer module. It goes through the legacy side of that API. It will work with it, but it's kind of redundant because then you end up with sort of two sets of templates. So you may find that Symphony Mailer Lite's all you really need in that case.
What if you're not using the SMTP subsystem to send emails? What if you have the SendGrid API integration installed, and that's something that you've been using as a company because it's been much more reliable, as opposed to, one-time containers at, I don't know, Pantheon that use the SMTP subsystem to send emails.
So I think there are a series of plugins, I think, for Symphony or that already exist in the Symphony mailer project. I don't know if SendGrid is one of them, but it might be. If that exists in Symphony mailer, it would be like trivially easy to probably bring compatibility for that into Symphony Mailer Lite. Because basically there is an interface for configuring the transport configuration like SMTP server or whatever. It basically is building a DSN like that needs to be handed over to Symphony Mailer. So if Symphony Mailer already knows how to talk to SendGrid API, then the code required to construct this string is, I can make it in 15 minutes probably. So
yeah, the way that I did it with Symphony Mailer, by the way, when we're using Postmark, which is similar to SendGrid, is we just use their SMTP integration, and then that just made it easy. Like, and I think SendGrid also has an SMTP integration, so you can just use that.
So
you wanted
this goes to the comment you made earlier, Nick, about like SMTP's technology. It's 80s, 90s technology. Why are we, still using this, and why are we not modernizing? And yeah, it's there. It's sort of reliable, and it's easy to implement. Like you said, I could just use the SMTP integration, but boy, wouldn't it be better if we had like a more modern system?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just pulled up because I was like, I need a visual. Sorry, listener, but I just pulled up my mail system configuration for my personal site. So like, I guess if I'm reading this correctly, because I also use SendGrid. So like that was a great question, because I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm feeling like I could probably like, and Wayne can keep me honest here, right? Like I could set the formatter as easy email for in mail system, and then the sender as SendGrid, and like that would kind of like do the same thing, right?
no, the formatter would be Symphony Mailer Lite.
Okay. Yep.
But the way to do this is to write, like I said, I'll have to look it up. I don't have it in front of me here, but there should be a Symphony Mailer plugin that connects to that API. That would work with that library. That's what you would do first, and then it would need, like I said, the binding, just a trivial sort of binding within either Symphony Mailer module or Symphony Mailer Lite could do this to enable that kind of transport.
But before we get back to your question, Ivan, I have to say that this is one of those things. Like, I think this is a poster child for why email in general in Drupal needs simplification, and I think your question will tie into this. But because I'm an experienced backend developer, I've set up email for clients and Drupal sites dozens of times, and still every time I do it, there's always a small amount of trial and error. Like, okay, which setting do I need to set in this module? Which setting do I need to set in this module? And once you set it up, you kind of remember how it works, and it's just tweaking things and getting things working the way that you want. But it's the interaction, and like you said, Ivan, there should be an easier way, right? So what do you get there?
SMTP is amazing, right? It's a little old. Have you all heard of JMAP?
No, what is it?
Not.
Yeah, I have heard of it.
So JMAP is a protocol that was started by this company, Fastmail, but I think they did it in a very open way, and it recently was published by the IETF as I think it's a protocol. I'm not exactly sure, but it would be something that would be a new standard for mail manipulation, but also mail delivery and mail go from one place to another. But it's a more modern JSON-based API. And so like instead of implementing SendGrid API or Postmark API to get mail out of your website and deliver it elsewhere. Instead of using SMTP, like JMAP might be something that would be a valid alternative. And so I just wanted to bring that up and ask Wayne what you think about that, and how many decades does it take us to get there?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I actually am a Fastmail customer. I use that for my own email, so I am familiar with JMAP. I mean, somewhat. I know that it exists and
Yeah.
whatnot, but I haven't tried to implement it in any way. The one thing I would say though is all of these things that we're talking about right now is one of the reasons why you should be using something like Symphony Mailer, because Symphony Mailer takes care. It knows how to do SMTP, but it also knows how to do SendGrid API, or I don't know for certain if it's SendGrid, but it knows several other things. And then you can
Smart.
you can easily use this, and then so Drupal doesn't need to get into that business, and so Drupal can just be like, yeah, if Symphony Mailer supports it, then great, then we can just support it. And so then if something new comes along, it's easy. It just needs to be written into Symphony Mailer, and then everything else upstream from that can support it in a way that can be different on every site. So all of this is why there should be this kind of library like Symphony Mailer in there. Something. I mean, the Swift Mailer would have been fine until it was over, but
Well,
So-
I think that brings up the
So
next
confused.
question: is what's the stability of Symphony Mailer, right? Because Swift Mailer is around for a while now. It's not that it's just end of life. It's gone. Like, it's not like, oh, you need to update to this new version. It's no longer supported, no longer being developed. I mean, does the Symphony Foundation have like a specified support window for Symphony Mailer? Or is it kind of like their main
I'm
product?
sure they do. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure that they have some kind of roadmap. But what I would say is, if you were doing this in Drupal, the Drupal core provides an abstraction layer between most code that would be sending emails and that lower level library. So, like, for example, Easy Email doesn't talk directly to Symphony Mailer. Even if it's using Symphony Mailer Lite, it just talks to Drupal and says, send this email. And then the Symphony Mailer Lite module says, oh, we're sending email. And then it does the lower level thing. So you could pull Symphony Mailer. I mean, Easy Email was written like 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, it was written for Swift Mailer. So I haven't changed it at all to make it work with Symphony Mailer. So the fact that layer of abstraction is an important piece. And that is one potential, like, if you are concerned about that, I mean, that is one potential issue with, I'm just realizing this now, thinking on my feet here, but the alternative API that is presented by the Drupal Symphony Mailer module, it is kind of more tightly mapped to the Symphony Mailer library versus going through core, where there would be that level of abstraction. Because, like, theoretically, core could swap that out for something else, and as long as you were just talking to core, it would be core's problem to have backward compatibility.
Got it.
Or not, or to deprecate it or whatever.
So basically, if Symphony Mailer went away, anything you set up an Easy Email would work. You just have to find the new replacement for that portion of it. Whereas the Symphony Mailer full module, like, it's just going to go away. You're going to have to find a new replacement for everything.
Yeah. So, okay. So now my previous statement about mail system and the settings there make a lot more sense. Like, Easy Email is just saying, like, hey, format my email and send it Drupal, and Drupal saying, okay, let me look at mail system. How should I do this? And if you're using Symphony Mailer Lite as the transport, right, you can then use SendGrid to send that out if that's what you're using. That all makes more sense now. I'm glad we got there. It took us a little while, but we got there. I want to go back to that JMAP thing for a second there, though, right? So is JMAP necessarily like a transport like SMTP, or is it just simply a format of the information to make it easier?
Good question. I believe that the original design was to replace the proprietary API that Gmail has. And so Fastmail's implementation was to say, IMAP, not so great. Gmail has this thing. We don't want to redevelop it. Let's make something to make our web interface faster, and let's open source it. And then I believe that it's evolved into not just web client stuff, but it's also transport and CalDev, I want to say, and maybe even contacts. It's trying. I believe it's trying to modernize the whole approach, and that includes the protocol. Not 100% sure though.
So, okay. So this seems like it would probably need wider adoption, right? Between
Yes.
so like, you know,
Yes.
your mail client, right? I'm using Thunderbird. It uses SMTP, right? You can use is it MAP? Is that the other one? Am I making that up? IMAP?
IMAP.
Yeah. So you can use IMAP. You can use, I mean, if you're, you want to talk about old things, pop, like you could pop, so pop your email. Like, man, I feel like we just went back to 1998. But like this feels like it probably would need wider adoption into like different services and clients before it could be widely used, right?
I think you're spot on. I think JMAP might be one of those, like it might replace IMAP. It might be an option, but it needs something that's going to be much wider than like, an IETF,
Got it.
RFC, or
And I find it, like you said, decades kind of, I think partially as a joke for these types of replacements, but the truth is, one of the powers of email is that it's also one of the curses of email is that it works and has worked from the API side the same way since it was invented almost. I mean, there obviously were some early changes, but if you're running an email server that you set up in 1999, it's going to be able to transport any emails that are sent today.
That's all true theoretically, but the problem is that large companies are now like in charge of being actually able to deliver those messages. So yes, you could theoretically run that. Yes, the email is still going to go through those servers, but good luck trying to have it delivered unless you're a major company that's delivering email for a living. Like it's totally put, I think, mom and pop shops out of the email business. And that's why you have to rely on things like SendGrid and Postmark to actually ensure that you can deliver things. And like this is another. Sorry, I have a bit of a rant. Is that okay?
Yeah, rant away. We love rants.
I mean, this is why it's typically kind of problematic to send emails from any host that has any kind of containerized hosting going on, because those hosts typically have containers that spin up and spin down whenever your site, like if it's dormant, it's going to respin up a container and your site will be there, but it'll probably have a different email or a different IP address, right? And if you're sending email and it's coming from that container at that host and it's connecting to your SMTP server, it's going to have a different originating IP address. And that's not the greatest for email delivery. And so like at that point, we're like, well, maybe using a SendGrid SMTP or a SendGrid API or a Postmark, where that's like you have to do that. You can't rely on PHP Mail or anything that's local on those containerized hosting solutions.
Just out of curiosity, Yvonne, I want to dig into something you said, taking the mom and pop out of like being able to send emails. So like back in the early days of email, like you set up an email server, you were like person at xyz.com and sent it and it went one place to another. Is your feeling that, the perceived safeguards that have been put in place to prevent spamming are making it harder? Like for example, like you have to add like DKIM records and SFP records, maybe that acronym might be wrong,
SPF.
but SPF, thank you,
SPF.
records to like your DNS in order to be able to like validate that like the originator of the email is accurate. Like, is that what you mean by you're making it hard for mom and pop shops?
No, I think it's not that. I think that's table stakes. Like you just have to do that because that's best practice right now. I think the hard part is the amount of hours that your team would have to spend managing those servers and making sure that you're not being um, abused, that you have a static IP address that is in good standing. Like
Mhm.
you couldn't run an like you could not run a mail server on a Raspberry Pi at your home with, even if you got a static IP from Comcast or US
Mhm.
Internet or whoever, like it would still be problematic because that IP address belongs to the company that you have your internet service from.
Mhm.
And like you're going to have to buy an IP block, or you're going to have to get an IP from a vendor that is that is reputable, and then you have to protect yourself from your IP address becoming something that is a problem on the internet and not being trusted. And
Yeah.
I think that's a major barrier of entry. Like we couldn't set up an email company right now if we tried. Like we could,
Right.
but
So you're more talking about the monopolistic aspects of it, as far as like, big business is the only folks that can easily do this.
yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
fair. I just wanted to make sure we were clarifying that
All on the
point.
same page. Thank you.
Okay. So let's turn back in our last little bit of time here to back to easy email, right? And for that matter, let's include Wayne, your other module. I'm going to make sure I get the name right. Symphony Mailer Lite. How, like, are there roadmaps, or do you have roadmaps for both of these modules of like, new features that you plan on adding, advancements that you plan on making, for this year?
So after you invited me on this podcast, it sort of lit a fire under me, and I did a bunch of I blew through a bunch of issues that have been blocking some changes on easy email. So right now the roadmap is pretty limited. I think we've actually got a lot of things done. But I actually realized that I forgot to tell you about one of the best features of easy email and how
Oh,
it's
what's that?
differentiated. So if I could take a minute to do that.
Absolutely. Go
So
for it.
so I did say at the beginning that email allows you to send arbitrary emails. That arbitrary is actually like a really key distinction. So if you try to send emails with other modules, Symphony Mailer or something else, other systems, other modules as well, they have to be declared to Drupal, and that's almost exclusively done in code, right? There has to be some sort of triggering element or something that formats what the content of that email is, almost exclusively in code. Even if you want to do like a template in Symphony Mailer, you have to write an email builder class as part of their new API to sort of declare that such an email exists and describe what the variables are for it. Easy email allows you to just come up with any email you want. And so you can create a template, and then you can trigger it because it's all built on the entity system. It has integration with the ECA module. So I'm sure you're familiar with the ECA, like the
Uh,
entity
do
event
not
condition
get Nick
action.
started on the ECA
Okay.
module. It is
So
a love.
so let's say you want to create like an email that gets sent every time a new article is posted. That's trivially easy. You could do it in 10 minutes without writing any code. And you could have all that, like you could template that email, people could edit that email all they wanted. It works with the workflow module. This is something I'm really hoping somebody wants to hire me to do, but it's theoretically can work with the workflow module. So I had this idea that, automatically generated emails could be like saved but not sent. And then maybe there's a situation where they have to be approved or something, like they're generated by AI. Somebody has to read it and hit send. You could totally build this
Hmm.
kind of a system, like some kind of in like an intranet. I mean, you wouldn't have this for maybe a public facing website, but maybe an intranet Drupal, Drupal intranet. Uh, and again with ECA, you can totally sort of do all that without writing any code. The fact that it uses the entity API for everything, in addition to the sort of standard Drupal API for the email sending, is one of its really powerful benefits because it integrates with so much other stuff because of that workflow, ECA, etc.
So in theory, if I'm hearing you correctly, and you wanted to, right, you could essentially build like a MailChimp or a constant contact replacement, right? Like if your organization sent marketing emails and they need to go through approval workflows and you wanted to send tests and do all that stuff, right? You could essentially use this kind of workflow that you're talking about to kind of replace those services. Is that
Yeah, I mean, you
accurate?
would definitely want to use like SendGrid or something as far as the deliverability aspect,
Yeah,
but
right.
yes, yes.
Hmm.
And I do use them, for example, on Drupal Tutor. I use them for sending like drip emails to
Mhm.
students who are taking classes, because I have these sort of reminders like, hey, don't forget you're taking a class, you're supposed to be watching the videos, etc. And so and actually one of the nice features of Easy Emails, it has this you can have a unique key for an email so that you don't send dupes. So, which is really nice for something like the drip email,
Oh,
because it
yeah.
simplifies the code that I have to write. Like, oh, it's time to send this email. Then I can just do an entity query. Like, did I
So-
already send it? Like,
So-
because by looking for that key and then not did the dupe send it.
So I have two questions. One is a specific question about this, but so would you use that integration to send like abandoned cart emails? Like there's a commerce abandoned cart module, right? If
Mhm.
you were starting today, would you use that abandoned cart module, or would you use ECA and Easy Email to send those?
I haven't used the abandoned cart module, but certainly I think you could do it. So you would have ECA, you would have to run some sort of query, which I think you can do that, right? You can do some kind of views integration with it where it can run a query. I'm not a real expert in ECA, but I think you can do that. So whatever, to define whatever an abandoned cart is, and
Okay.
then you could have it create an email, send the email, and then potentially save it as well.
So from my solution architecture standpoint, Nick, like I would say, like if you're already using ECA and you can get the business logic to work within ECA, like yes, do it, because adding another module just to do that one piece of it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense.
Also remember the client, when they go to
And
edit,
edit the
edit the email, all of the emails are edited in the same spot. So if they want to change the receipt email, the card abandoned email, they're all going to be listed there in the Easy Email template screen.
well, and if I'm understanding correctly, you can also use Easy Email to override that template anyway, even if you use the abandoned cart module to trigger the email.
Yes, it does require a little bit of code, like a YAML file in a custom module or something, just to declare that, because
Okay.
I don't. If Easy Email doesn't know, it needs the module and key for that, and
Got
it needs to know what parameters are, because there's like a parameter mapping step where you map fields in the template to the parameters that were originally in the email.
Got it.
So Wayne, not that I want to add more work to your plate in a future state, but it would be really awesome, I think, if a recipe were developed that would allow for somebody in the Drupal space to be able to just run that recipe and have the kind of robust email sending system that we were just talking about. So like that could be a future feature request there for I don't know if it would be Easy Email or a combination of other modules, but creating a recipe along those lines I think would be real popular.
So this is a new question. As we've been going through the show, based on the sheer number of times we provided what we thought was a clear example of restatement of something you said, and you said, actually, no, not quite. Maybe not that way. There's obviously a gap in, understanding, from at least from my perspective, on all the different layers involved in sending email from Drupal. Am I missing documentation somewhere, or is it just this complex? Is there a better way that these different layers could be communicated to developers? Is there documentation we could contribute to make it clearer? Or do you just have to spend the amount of time you spend understanding it to understand it as well as you do?
Yeah, it's tough because everything's in contrib, right? I mean, so in the contrib space, it's the Wild West, right? So even if you did, because I actually thought about it, should I make a course in how to do HTML emails that for DrupalTutor.com? And then when I looked at it, I was like, man, if I make a course, it's going to be out of date in like 6 months, because like there's this like the nuts and bolts of what you do, like the literal step by step, will change in subtle ways because you're sort of usually tying together multiple contrib modules, and things are changing in core potentially. So it's tough. I don't think the documentation exists just because there's not a whole, there's documentation for hook mail and hook mail alter and mail handler and
Yeah.
core, but they don't do all that other stuff. So I think it's mainly,
That
it
makes me
depends
feel
on
better.
which things you put together, which depends on which things you put together, what your process
Yeah.
is going to be.
That makes me feel better as a developer because I didn't miss just like the really obvious read this page and you'll understand everything. But yeah, I think that's a long-term problem to maybe look into.
Wayne, you're doing so much work with the mail subsystem, with Symphony Mailer Lite. Like, it's amazing. Are you looking for any help with easy email?
Yeah. So going back to the roadmap idea, there are a few things like new ideas that I'm hoping that I don't necessarily need them right now, but maybe somebody else does, and maybe they want to contribute patches or merge requests or something. The things that I'm looking for anywhere that I'd like to see in easy email would be better web form integration, so that we could like send easy emails from web form. You could do it right now with ECA. You could have ECA trigger a easy email, but it's not like integrated into like the web form emails page where people might expect to see it. I would also really love to, and this one I might be able to find a client for because I've done it a bespoke before, but if you have something like SendGrid or Mailgun or something like that, they have these APIs where you can get the information about what happened to the email after you sent it. Like, did it bounce?
That would be
Did it? And so being able, because we can store the email on the site, we have that as an entity, then we theoretically could download this other history information so that you could then see like, oh, did this email actually get delivered? You could see, was it open? Were the links clicked? That would be important if you were going to build your MailChimp killer Drupal project with easy email. So that would be good. And then we got a few things. The newest version of easy email supports translations. So, but there's been some nice, would be nicer when you go to do the translations that has kind of the core user interface, and it's not as nice as what the custom forms we have for the regular template. So it'd be nice if there was some cleanup there. So, I mean, any help on those kind of things, if people are interested in those, go in the issue queue. Like, I'm a very responsive maintainer if people have patches or merge requests. I'm happy to review them expeditiously. So other than that, I mean, could use people installing and seeing what works, seeing new workflows. I mean, easy email only has like, it's been around for many years, but I haven't really promoted it that much. So I think it has like 550 known sites or something. So more people using it would be great, because and then bug filing.
Awesome.
Wayne, before we close it out, I think you said this earlier, and I wanted to, in this vein of helping with easy email, do you also, do contract work on easy email? Did I understand you correctly earlier when you said that?
Yeah. So I'm an independent developer. I do two things. I run DrupalTutor.com where I teach courses, but I'm also available for hire. And so I build some client sites or do other sort of modules for people and whatnot. So yes, I mean, if people have features that they want to hire me to do, then that's definitely an option as well.
So if you're listening to this, dear listener, and you have really thorny email problems and you want to move to easy email, and you need a certain integration or a certain update, you can reach out to Wayne, and he can help you do that. Wayne, thank you so much for joining us. This conversation is long overdue, and it was very insightful. So we appreciate your time today.
All right. Thanks.
Do you have questions or feedback? You can reach out to Talking Drupal on Twitter with the handle Talking Drupal, or by email with show@talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with our hosts and other listeners on the Drupal Slack and the Talking Drupal channel.
You can promote your Drupal community event on Talking Drupal. Learn more at talkingdrupal.com/tdpromo.
And get the Talking Drupal newsletter to learn more about our guest hosts, show news, upcoming shows, and much more. You can sign up for the newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
Thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing the Become a Patron button in the sidebar. Okay, as we bring this show in for a landing, if folks wanted to get a hold of you, talk more about email, where could they do that, Wayne?
So I'm Zingenuity on most Drupal.org, Drupal Slack. On other things like Twitter, it might be my full name, Wayne Aker. But probably, get in touch with me through Drupal.org. Probably has all the links. One thing I did want to say, I am going to do a webinar next month where I do it's a free webinar, just where I'm going to do the nuts and bolts of setting up easy email. So I'm going to just set it up. We're going to build a template. We're going to override the password, reset email. And I'm going to try to do an ECA thing, like I said before, like trigger an email when somebody makes a new article or whatever. So if people want to see how it's done, want to just get the quick walkthrough of it, I'm going to be doing that on March 6th. So we can maybe put the link or show notes or something. But
yeah. Yep. Definitely. And also, Wayne, if you share that link with us via email, we can drop it in our newsletter and send it out to our listeners. Yvonne, if folks wanted to get a hold of you, how could they go about doing that?
That's easy. You can just look at my profile on 107.com. So if you go to 107.com/Yvonne, then all of my links are right there.
And that's TEN, the number 7.com.
/IVAN.
There you go. Nick, how about you?
You can find me online pretty much everywhere at NixVan, NICXVAN.
And I'm John Picozzi. You can find me on all the major social networks as well as Drupal.org at John Picozzi. And you can find out more about EPAM at EPAM.com.
If you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.